Hi, this is Mashnu, and I've been looking at your game. Well, let me turn the board around first, because you are playing black in this game. It's the game that you played on ChessCube against CES 2004. Let's have a look at the game. There are a few interesting moments and a very important moment where you missed a win. But I'll come to that later. Your opponent opens with d4 and you go with d5, c4, then we have the Queen's Gambit. e6 is one of the most played replies against the Queen Gambit. e6 and c6 are the most popular moves. Knight to f3, knight to f6, correct, bishop to g5 and bishop to e7 to break this pin on f6, e6, and here you castle kingside, knight to c3 is played, and you go on with h6. This has been played many times before. The most played move in this position for white is bishop to h4. Bishop to h4 and bishop takes f6 are both very popular. Your opponent played bishop to f4. That's interesting. He wants to stay with the with this dark square bishop, and perhaps he has some ideas of attacking c7. Here in this position it's advisable to either play b6 or c5. c5 would challenge the white center immediately, so then we get really increase the tension in the position. And the move b6 is to prepare the development of the bishop either to b7 or to a6. You chose to play knight to c6, and of course knight to c6 it's not a bad move. It means you are developing a piece, and the only thing about this move is that it blocks the c pawn, and that's, well, a bit well, not necessary, because the c7 pawn could be perhaps later a target for your opponent, since his bishop still is alive. Later a combination with the with these two pieces, the knight and the bishop, could try to attack c7. It's not possible right now at the moment. He won't do this, but it's something to think about. That in this kind of positions it's a good idea to either play c5 or b6. The move knight to c6 played, c takes d5, and here the question is how to retake on d5. You took with the knight, and since you have not played b6 and bishop b7, perhaps it's a good idea to continue to take with the pawn. Pawn takes d5, because then your bishop can be easily developed, pinning the knight on f3, and it's not longer locked up by his own pawns, so you start getting more and more active play this way. But well, perhaps it's a matter of taste how to retake there. I would take with the pawn. You took with the knight, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, now queen takes d5. Here your opponent played bishop to d3, and actually this again this gave you the option of again increasing a bit the pressure in the center, because here the move e5 is possible. If it takes, let's say knight takes e5, then there is knight takes e5, bishop takes e5, and queen takes g2. So this g2 pawn is weak. So that means that the move e5, the purpose of it would be to challenge the white center and to persuade the white knight to take on e5, so the g2 pawn is undefended. We see here how important it is to castle early in the game, and that's something that your opponent didn't do. So that's what makes this move e5 possible. Of course, after e5, it doesn't need to take with the knight immediately. It can also take with bishop or take with pawn, but that's not very good. Taking with pawn is the worst of all, because then he has problem with his bishop on d3. After rook to d8, this is attacked, and he apparently can make a move like bishop to c2, defending the queen once more, but then he loses the queen because you play a check here. A check, and then the rook is attacking still the queen, and if he defends, he puts this in between, then you simply take here, and if he retakes, now we have these two pieces in the same diagonal, so we can play bishop to b4, winning the queen. So you see, this position in the game is actually much richer than we would think at first sight. This position after e4, I'm sorry, e5, we would have many interesting things arising. Now in the game you did something that's also very good. You gave a check on a5, queen a5 check, and when I saw this, I saw, oh, this is great, this guy is playing very well, because now the king must go to f1. Your opponent didn't go to f1 with the king, he played queen to d2, which is actually a blunder, because again, just as in the variation before, he's placing his king and his queen in the same diagonal, and your bishop could go to b4. So after bishop b4 here, you win the queen. And you missed this this tactic. These are things that can be improved if you do every day some tactic exercises to recognize these patterns. In fact, this is all about pattern recognition. Queen to d2, we must recognize this pattern immediately, and it's something, pattern recognition is something that is developed slowly. The more games you play and the more tactical exercises that you do. For example, there is a website that's called Chess Tempo, I believe, and there are many tactical examples there and tactical exercises that you can do. Challenges, let's say these tactical puzzles, you know, where they say white play and win or black play and win, and often they are about this kind of patterns that arise. So that's one advice I would like to give you. If you improve your basic tactics, I'm sure that the amount of games that you are going to win will rise a lot easily, because most games played at amateur level are won or lost because of this kind of simple tactics. Let's continue with the game. So this is just one thing that happened. You took the queen on d2. He took back with the knight, and we have an equal position now. Both three light pieces. Well, only thing, your bishop is still a bit locked up here because the pawn on e6 is preventing its development, but that's only temporary. We can perhaps later improve this. You played bishop to d6 now, wanting to trade this dark square bishop. He took it, you retook with the pawn, and now we have a symmetrical pawn structure. This increases the draw chances. Let's see what happened, because something special happened here. He played this knight to c4, of course attacking your pawn on d5, on d6, I'm sorry, but it would be more logical to try to get control over the c file for him by playing, for example, rook to c1, controlling the c-file. That would be a strategic sound plan. He didn't do this. He played knight to c4, and here you played a rook to d8. Another option would be, of course, to advance this pawn, but the thing about this advancing this kind of pawns is that we always must think about how is this bishop going to be developed. So in fact, the only way later to develop it is either preparing f6 and e5, or playing b6 and bishop a6 later. It's important to think in an early stage how to solve this problem of this locked up bishop that arises many times in the Queen's Gambit with black. So it's an important thing to pay attention to. Now you played here rook to d8. He continued with castle. Now d5. So here actually we see that you play rook to d8 first and then d5, and in fact you are let's say losing a bit of time by, you could have played d5 immediately, and then perhaps the rook would be handy on another file than the d file. So this is a bit double to play first rook d8 and then d5. He went with this knight to a3, and you played knight to b4, attacking his bishop. Now we start seeing that you are getting chances perhaps of developing your bishop and making the c8 square available for the rook. Yeah, that could be a good idea. The bishop goes to b1. This is not the best square for the bishop of your opponent, because now he's locking his rook on a1. So here black is a bit better already, because of this bishop on b1 blocking this rook on a1. Bishop to d7, a good development to activate your pieces and to make the c8 square available. And he continues now with knight to c2. Here it would be interesting to have a look at the move knight to d3. It's something, when we get this kind of positions, we must ask ourselves, what are the weak squares of my opponent? And in this case the b2 pawn is the only undefended pawn here. Playing let's see, knight to d3, attacking the b2 pawn would force him to play b3, and then after this you can get control over the c file by playing rook to c8. Now he will have to do something about this bunch of pieces there that are blocking his own play, and your knight is actually controlling these two squares, so the rook cannot be activated by being moved over there. So a logical idea here for him would be to play, for example, knight to e1 to get rid of your knight on d3. You can take here, and after he retakes, this is an important strategic plan now for you. You need to double up the rooks on the c file. So here rook to c3 is a very good move, placing the rook on a dark square so he cannot be attacked by his light square bishop, and your next move will be rook d to c8, controlling this c file. Now it's not completely clear that if you do this you will win the game, but I'm sure that you will have the best play, because you will be controlling the only open file in the game. And this is something to remember. This has to do with piece activity. Let's go back to the game now, how it went, because your opponent, you played here, instead of knight to d3 you played a bishop to b5. And this is a mistake. This is a tactical mistake. Two light pieces are worth more than a rook. So here in fact you are giving material. Perhaps you thought that he would be forced to move his rook now, but no, he simply takes the knight on b4, and after you take his rook, he retakes with the king, and suddenly things have turned. I find that you were a bit lucky that the game ended in a draw, because with this material, this two late pieces against a rook, white has good winning chances. You played a5 here, knight to d3, now b6. This is good because you take away the squares for the white knight. It would be good to try to control the c-file again. He played bishop to c2, and here he offered a draw, I think, because I see that the result here is a draw, and you accepted it. Of course you accept it. It's very good to accept in this position, to accept a draw, because white has winning chances here because of these two light pieces against a rook. Sometimes we see that players sacrifice a rook for two light pieces, or no, the other way around, sacrifice two light pieces for a rook, but there must always be some kind of extra compensation for this. For example, that you get a few pawns later, or you weaken certain important squares, or that you weaken certain pawns of your opponent that you can attack later, things like that. Now in this case, I'll go back to that moment here when you played bishop to b5. In fact, you are sacrificing these two light pieces, but you don't get any extra compensation. Now let's summarize the most important moments in the game. I'll go to the beginning, and well, one thing is interesting to think about is here the move knight c6, the option of playing c5 and make it really a tense position in the center is something that can be very instructive, because the more you play this kind of positions, the more you get used to calculate what happens about all these tactics, and also you get used to fight for the center. Let's continue with the game. Knight to c6 and taking here. This is another important moment. Consider opening the option to develop your own bishop by opening this file if you get the chance. It's again this is about piece activity, so it looks like this is, let's say, the main learning point is to think about how can I activate my pieces the best. Let's go back to the game. Take, queen takes, and here the well, actually the two interesting options. One is what you did, queen to a5, a good move, and another one is the option of advancing this pawn. Now advancing this pawn, well, it asks that you are able to calculate quite a lot, because you need to calculate three types of capture here, and also being aware that the weak pawn on g2 is probably a target for you after he has taken with a knight. But what happened in the game is very interesting, because you gave this check, and now your opponent made a serious mistake by playing his queen to d2, and here tactics, pattern recognition, bishop b4 would have been winning. That didn't happen. You took on d2 with check, knight takes, bishop d6, trade. We have this the symmetrical pawn structure. Already when this arises, actually the idea in your head should pop up that it's all about the c-file now. So knight to c4, rook to d8 is not really necessary, since you could have played d5 immediately. And now here this is also an important moment, that knight to d3 would be a good idea to make use of this weakness here, and later to control the c-file. As I said before, let me show you the variation, because I want to keep emphasizing that this leads to control over the c-file for you. After taking here rook c3, again this is about piece activity. the rooks on the open files are the most active rooks. So these are, let's say, the strategical parts of the game that you could use to improve your play. In the game, bishop d7, knight c2, bishop b5 played, and this is just a tactical mistake. By giving these two pieces for the rook, here a draw is something that you can be very happy with, because the position is good for white here. So summarizing, I can tell you that looking at strategic ideas, I must advise you to have attention for piece activity, to think about, okay, on what open files are there, what places would be my pieces the most active to control the position. And on a tactical field, it's necessary to keep practicing all this kind of tactical chess puzzles, because then you will recognize this kind of tactical patterns, like the winning the queen in this game. That option you will recognize this in a few seconds, and then it will give you lots of pleasure and nice gains. Well, thank you for sending me this game. I enjoyed looking at it, and I hope you find this instructive, and keep playing, because the more you play, the more you learn. And it's very good to be very critical on one side on our own play, and on the other side also to enjoy the wins and the victories. Okay, so you can go to my website and do a donation now if you like, and I hope to see you next time. Alright, thanks very much, and bye bye.